Hey, welcome everybody. So good to see you. Hello, Emil. Feel like every time we start a new workshop this season, I am reconnecting with friends. So this is getting so much fun. Thank you so much for coming back again. We've got a few more people joining us, so we'll let you all get settled in before we get started. Promise not to talk too long. We have an amazing teacher trainer with us today, Ken Pendleton. And I do not want to take too much time away from Ken. So there's a lot of stuff to go through. All right, let's, if you'd like to, go ahead and introduce yourself, just a little bit about yourself in chat. You can tell us where you're joining us from. If you'd like to tell us what you're teaching, that would be awesome. Whatever you'd like to add. Just want to say, hey, what's up? That's cool too. We're a friendly group, so whatever you'd like to share. We'll let you get settled in. Hello, everybody. Hey, Paula. How did I miss you coming into the room? We have another teacher trainer in our midst today, Paula Medina. If you happened in on her workshop this last Monday, it was a pretty great workshop. If you did not, and you weren't registered for it, let me know and I can send you the follow-up video on that. Welcome, everybody. Hey, to Georgia. First time teaching computer science. Awesome. You're going to learn some really good tips from Kent today, too. I always think it's very valuable, no matter what language you're teaching, to really experience a ton of different approaches to teaching, because you can come away with a lot of really good strategies to use with your students. Welcome, everybody. All right. So for those of you who may not know who I am, my name is Lori, and I'm I forgot what I did for a second. I'm a beauty specialist here at CodeHS. And I don't know what's my position. And I've been here surprisingly for well over 3 years now. And but prior to being here at CodeHS and working with all of you amazing computer science teachers and the teacher trainers, I was in the classroom for 20 years. For all 20 of those years, I was a technology director. And for 10 of those years, I was also a computer science teacher. And I used CodeHS in my own classroom. And for those of you who might be feeling like, wow, kind of new to this, I'm a little nervous. Let me tell you, this former English teacher figured it out. And now it is my passion. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. So I am very, very excited to be here with you today. I already mentioned that we have Ken Pendleton with us, one of our amazing CS teachers from Dallas, the Dallas area, and he is one of our CodeHS teacher trainers as well. So I'm very excited for him to be here with us today. We also have a number of CodeHS team members with us because we can't do these workshops by ourselves. So we have Anna from the support team with us. Anna, we are so glad you're back again. I cannot do workshops without support anymore, so just going to be pinging you all the time. They are so fast. If you've ever worked with support, they're amazing. And we also have Robin, who is one of my team members on the PD team. So yay, we have many people to support any questions that we might have today. All right, so I think we have settled down in numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So we've got a few things to go through before I turn it over to Kent. Double check. Yep, I hit record. All right, we're good to go. Okay, so first things first, we do have the link to the slides. And if you're not in a place where you just have a good way to look at slides and watch this at the same time, no worries. I will make sure to include this link for you after the workshop as well. But you can go ahead and click that link to access the slides or grab that QR code. I'll leave this here for just a second. The paranoia that I feel about QR codes is real. I just scanned it to make sure it was right after I've done that about 17 other times, but we are good to go. So All right, and we've got another link that you're really going to want to grab. So this link in particular is our links doc for this whole workshop. So this doc is going to include a lot of stuff. And so you will definitely want to grab this link, codehs.com/teach-p5js-links, or scan the QR code. This is going to have everything you need, including the link to the slides, including the link to sign up for an account if you've never had an account, the attendance link, which will be coming up next as well. I'll leave this here for just a moment. We have a few more people joining us. And I recognize those names. Yay. While I'm leaving this here, I'm going to leave this here for a second so anybody who's just joined us can grab this link stock, because this is one of the most important links, just so you've got access to everything. I'll also mention that we are just getting started with all of our summer workshops this year. This is really just our second week of workshops. So if you did miss any of week one, which happened to be getting started with CodeHS or the deeper dive into CodeHS, I am more than happy to send those links out, and I can send that link out to all of the videos in the follow-up email. I'll make sure that you get all of those. I'll just link to the playlist. And if you want to see anything else that's coming up, make sure you head out to codehs.com/freepd, sign up for any and all. Even if you can't make it to them, I'm more than happy to send that follow-up to anybody who's registered. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so if you don't have an account, just in case somebody doesn't have an account yet, head on to codehs.com/signup and create your free teacher account. If you are creating a teacher account for the first time today, know that there is a process for verification that we go through just to make sure we are verifying teachers and not giving solutions to students. So you might not see solutions today if this is your first time. If you are signing up for the first time and you are hoping to get verified quickly, you can always drop a message in chat or in the Q&A to Anna. I'm going to ping you, Anna, because I think you'll be the fastest for us. I know you're faster, way faster than I ever am, so, but she can help you get verified today. All right. And one more link. So once you have your CodeHS educator account, or you need to sign in as one or sign in with your account, then we'd love for you to click on codehs.com/teach-p5js-attend. And that is going to allow me to send you a certificate of attendance for this workshop. We know that is a really critical part of professional learning and continued learning for teachers. So make sure to click that link and I can get you your cert right after this workshop is over. All right, so this is going to be, and I'm going to stop talking pretty soon, but I want to take you through just a couple more things. So Kent is going to primarily be working in Sandbox today. This is something that we've been talking about in some of our other workshops, talking quite a bit about using the Sandbox. And Kent does some really special things for his students and creates a lot of custom content. And so I'm really excited for him to talk about his program today. This is going to be his Sandbox folder. And we'll come back to this again as well. And Anna just tossed this in chat. But I wanted to just talk briefly about how to use those sandboxes. So the really nice thing about Sandbox programs is that you're actually able to copy anybody else's Sandbox program and use that for yourself. When you fork a Sandbox program, you are not creating a copy, or you're not just simply editing the same copy as the original. You're making your own copy. So you can do edits to it, you can tweak it, you can really look at that code and dig into it as your own code. So the way that you can do that is on this slide. And I'll actually jump out to the Sandbox really quick. We'll see if I can show you how to do that. So this is what that link is going to take you to for Kent's Sandbox folder. You're going to see all of the different parts of his program here. So if I click on Start, so this is where I can actually look at Kent's Sandbox. And notice right here, I have this fork button. And it tells me that I'm going to be forking this to my Sandbox. I'm going to click Fork, and now I can view my program. And now notice fork went away. And that's because I have now made a copy of Kent's program for myself. So that is absolutely something that you will be able to do. You can fork any of the sandbox programs. You can share sandbox programs with teachers in any way that you'd like. So it's a really, really nice feature. So again, you'll just find fork up here once you click on Kent's sandboxes. All right, and I think, Kent, I have talked enough. So I am going to stop talking and I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous teacher trainer, Kent Pendleton.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori. Thank you for your help. And Anna and Robin, thank you also for being here. You guys, I'm so grateful that y'all are here, particularly when I know that you could be out watching the Flash movie that came out today, and instead you're with us here. So, but after the session, you can hightail it over and watch the new Flash movie that's being presented today. As you probably have guessed, I'm a big superhero fan. I love the Marvel ecosystem. And so in trying to figure out a way to wrap up my classes this year with a bang, I envisioned a scene from Captain America, the Civil War. It's the scene where the Winter Soldier was being activated to do his nefarious work by the evil Nemo, I think. And so if you remember that scene in the movie, and there's a link to it in the code that we're going to look at, they read this phrase of 10 words in Russian, and it activates the Winter Soldier. Well, I want to activate P5JS Winter Soldiers with some animated words that we can supply the program with, and it's going to show these words kind of being thrown at us from the screen. And it's my way of giving you hopefully a general introduction to the idea of P5JS, which is nothing more than JavaScript programming on steroids using some goodies from the processing people that have made animation in particular a lot easier than it might normally be in this JavaScript world. So that's what this is all about. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. When I'm learning, it helps me to know what the end game is. Another reference, by the way, to a Marvel movie, is what am I going to be doing as a result of all this work I'm going to be engaged with. And so I like to start with the end in mind. I'm going to show you the final product. I'm going to walk you through it. We're going to look at things that hopefully you might not have thought about doing, and then that will set the context for what we're going to do. And then I've staged the program out in like 5 levels of development. I'm going to be coding some of it with you. Others, I'll just be directing it to you. If you want to hard code along with me, that's fine. If you want to just watch and listen, you'll have all these stages yourself that you can go toy with. And so it's kind of like breaking things up in kind of an autopsy kind of way. We're taking the final product and then chunking it up into 5 different parts. And hopefully, no matter what your level of comfort is with HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and then maybe P5JS. Also, I've thrown in some Bootstrap too, which I found helped with the development process. I'll be talking about that a little bit as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. And so I'm seeing here my sandbox in full view, and I'm going to click on this little sandbox program called WSoldier Final. Okay. So this is hopefully bulletproof. Hopefully it works just great. And so when it loads, you can see over here, I've got a listing of information. Now I'm going to just kind of show you an organizational scheme that works well for me in web design. I teach web design, I teach JavaScript programming, I teach processing, I teach Java, I teach Python. So I teach lots of stuff, but this organization scheme is what I do when I do web apps. Notice I've got a couple of files here, index and activate soldier, which are just plain Jane HTML files. But my assets, my resources, I've organized into something called images. Okay, so got a couple images that are there. And then scripts, my scripts are my JavaScripts. And in particular, this one that says activate soldier sketch, that's the one that processing needs. I'm going to have some other JavaScript that's embedded just in the regular web page, which may or may not be kind of professional. Some people say, hey, I want to put all my scripts in the scripts folder. And if you want to do that, knock yourself out. But this is the one that we'll be looking at toward the middle of our session together. And then I've got some styles, and these styles are just things that basically made the thing look nice from a Bootstrap perspective. And I'll be talking about this a bit. If you know Bootstrap now, I'm going to just tell you, I was resistant to learning Bootstrap. I thought, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to style all this myself. And realized that, you know, I don't have enough time in the day to do all the styling that I'd like to do. And last summer, I stumbled into using Bootstrap 5, and now I'm a big proponent for it. And in fact, shameless plug, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a session that Lori will talk about where we're going to be focusing exclusively on Bootstrap 5. But at any rate, if you're annoyed or familiar with Bootstrap 5, basically it's not going to be getting in the way too much. We're going to be tapping into it a bit with JavaScript, but I think you'll be okay with it. So I'm going to go, here's the index file, and I see here's my file right here. Now, I rarely ever run things right here. There's just not enough elbow room. And with what we want to do, it really is handy to see this in large form. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it. Hopefully it's bulletproof. So I'm going to launch. And so here we go. Now, because I'm using the Bootstrap ecosystem, just again, kind of showing you why I'm doing this. Responsiveness is a really big idea in the web world now. Most folks are going to see web pages on their phone, on their desktop, and all that. And it's really nice if you can write code in one place and then it looks good no matter where you go. And so that's been a design goal of mine for a couple of years, and I'm trying to teach my students that. So for example, as I shrink this thing down, watch, you can see this is cut up into 2 columns, and eventually, boom, it goes to 1 column. Well, that's Bootstrap magic, and it's really easy to do with just a little bit of Bootstrap knowledge. Also, I'm just going to point out one thing. If you're a detective, and really all of us as web developers ought to be detectives, we solve mysteries and we look for clues. I do want you to notice that they've got this little red line on the bottom of this nav bar. And as I make this thing larger, it goes to orange, yellow, green, blue, and then kind of an indigo color. And that's just showing you the breakpoints for Bootstrap, which is useful in Bootstrap work. And I'm just showing that to you from the perspective of when you're looking at stuff. I teach my students, what do you see? Keep your eyes and ears open. There are clues surrounding you here. At any rate, getting back to our program. So if you remember from the movie, the Russian words translated for the Winter Soldier were longing, rusted, 17, etc. And so those were our code words, but we wanted to be able to have our own code words. So I don't want to annoy my students, so sometimes I like to have the way of loading stuff without me having to type anything. So when I go load sample, notice I have my own code words. Now you get a special prize if you can figure out the message being communicated here. This was the end of the year challenge for my students. They had to figure out what was being communicated with these words. I'm going to see how smart you are. But at any rate, I've got this thing. Now what happens? I've loaded it. Now if I say submit, notice something materialized here. It was previously invisible. And I wonder, what was the technology that was made it visible, made it invisible and then visible? We'll figure that out in a moment. But notice, it's like I've got this fodder for my program and I've got a little activate button. And so notice it's just a hyperlink on steroids that's been styled to look like a button. Look, it kind of gets big. Isn't that fun? So you imagine you're pushing this button to activate the Winter Soldier and boom. Notice it said loading console. And now this is P5JS. P5JS is a way of using JavaScript to do really fun animations. And so here you see my words: wind, you, half, deep, powder, do, whatever you can read. Well, notice I can also pause it. So the reason I'm mentioning this to you, I like to be able to pause because notice the words start out really small and then they get large. Notice they're changing a little bit in opacity also. Again, I want you to be a detective and think, okay, let's see what's happening because we're going to have to code this in a minute. So I can pause. Also notice that the button changed to continue. Also notice the restart button had previously been deactivated, but when I pause, then it makes sense to restart. So if I thought, well, I didn't get those words at first, what were they? Restart. Now watch. If you watch the fabric, it gives you a little message, reloading sequence. So I try to make things user-friendly. I try to make the experience where it's immersive, where people know what's going on. And so you can see it's loading just fine. Now, once it reaches the end, and when is it going to reach the end? Well, Bootstrap, we love you. There's a little progress bar that was really easy to implement. And with just about 20 minutes of work, I got this nice little progress bar telling me how far along I am. If I had to do that myself, I would have gone nuts. But we love you, Bootstrap. You did that for us. Notice once it reaches the end, which it's about to reach the end, okay, 14 out of 14, 100%, reloading sequence, it starts over again, which is so cool. So I can pause, etc. Now, if I want to go back, one of my big deals in all web programming is, be able to go back to where you were without using the back button. So there's a hyperlink here. There's the Winter Soldier's arm. I click that and I'm back to here. Now, ooh, look what happened. It remembered my previous entries, didn't it? So don't hack off your user is one of my mantras. And so maybe that was important to them that they had that. Well, if I clear it, then I can come up with my own stuff. Now I'm going to make it easy on myself. It says enter your CSV entries. Ooh, I hover over it because I don't know what that means. And so it says, ooh, that means comma separated values. So, all right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because that's easier to type. And so I can follow directions. Now, if I submit, there we go, activate. Now I've got my stuff there, which is cool. Now, if I pause, restart, or if I just simply go back and reload, notice it remembers. Now, my students love to do this, and I'm so used to it now. I try to make sure that I never let them get the best of me, but it still happens. Because inevitably they're going to say, well, I'm going to break your program. So how could we break it? Well, what if we cleared? Ooh, that's nice. And then what if we try to submit something when there's nothing to submit? Oh my goodness, look at that. A lovely little pop-up window, okay? And this is also courtesy of Bootstrap. It's called a modal, and it's so easy to use. And so it says, you must add some entries before you submit a programming routine, close this dialog. Notice Bootstrap makes it where I can't click anywhere else in here. It even kind of pulses at me, hey, stupid, you got to release me first. Okay, got it. So now I know that that works. Now, here's something else equally potentially devastating. Let's suppose I've cleared things out. It's not saying I've got any previous stuff. And what if somebody's really evil like Nemo and they go over to the Activate Soldier program and run that from scratch without first going through this routine of entering your numbers? What's going to happen? So I go activate, if I can type, activate soldier.html and hit return and then refresh. Ooh, now I can't really see what's going on here. Let's look at it from a big perspective. So if I launch now, so I've anticipated that my students are going to be evil and they're going to try to break my program and make me look like a schmuck. But no, I have outsmarted them, and it doesn't have input, right? So system failure. Oh, and I like to not hack off my users. So notice I've got a link, add some words for the sequence. So I could either go back here, or it's telling me, hey, stupid, add some words. Oh, okay, I wasn't able to mess him up. So it's going to go back and to the loading page. Go back to the loading page. Come on, hurry. We're waiting. We're on the clock. Okay, it's being laggy. I'm going to just go back to the other. Oh, it's just being laggy altogether. Okay, I'm going to go back to just run it again. It was being a little laggy there. Let's run it again. Okay. Okay, there we go. So it went back. And so there we go. And I encourage you to think about these kind of things. Maybe your students challenge you all the time like mine do, and try to think outside the box. Now, if you're thinking there's one more thing he hasn't tested. Oh, you say, we want comma separated values. What if they don't do that? So what if I am mean and ornery and I say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? How will the computer think about this? Will it be one entry? Or will it be crafty and use the spaces and rechange them to commas? Let's see. Submit. Oh, look, it's magical. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing in one of the stages is kind of what I call input sanitization. I tell my students every time you open the door for letting users give you data, you can expect bad things to happen. They're either going to format things in the wrong way. They're going to actually really try to mess you up. And so I try to anticipate that by sanitizing input. So whether I'm teaching Java or Python, it doesn't matter. If I say the moment I'm letting you people use user input, we got to sanitize. So that's one of our stages that we'll look at in a moment. Now that was kind of nice. What if I clear, and what if I'm even more evil? What if I go 5, comma, space, comma, 4, comma, space, comma, 3, 2, 1. So you can see I really messed it up. It's got some spaces, it's got some commas. Will it be robust? Oh my gosh, look. So it had some way of checking out multiple spaces. It had a way of recognizing, yeah, if there's empty entries, let's get rid of them. And so it seems to be pretty good. Now, if we use a blend of commas and spaces, then look at this right here. One of my reasons for putting this mess right there is because it's so easy to copy and paste it. What if I have the original Winter Soldier stuff? So there it is. Notice in the original, if you remember the movie clip, and you can watch it by following the link, but don't watch it now. Longing, Rusted, 17, Daybreak, Furnace 9, Benign, Homecoming 1. Oh, Freight Car. It's one entry with a space. So the software is kind of smart. It says, all right, if they've got commas and spaces, any space that I see that separates words, I'm going to keep that as a delimiter in itself. Is that true? Submit. Oh, yes, looky there. And so when I come and activate, this is the original Winter Soldier sequence to turn on Bucky, okay, for evil, but we're not going to be doing evil. We're going to be doing good. Okay, so you can see these are coming along, and when we get to the freight car, it will say freight car, and you can imagine that that's going to happen. So I wanted to show you this is where we're going. And so in the next hour and a half, we're going to try to build this stuff up stage by stage, and hopefully we'll learn something, all of us, in the process. Okay, so that's the final stage. And so now what I'm going to do is, if I look over here, we're going to go now to stage 0. So I've got this Winter Soldier mission report. Isn't that the corniest thing? You must feel sorry for my students. It's so corny. So stage 0, you've seen what we can do. Now at the end of stage 0, at the end, what we want to do is we want to inventory the general layout of a JavaScript P5JS app. We're going to use X-ray vision to help us see what's going on behind the scenes using Chris Pedrick's web developer toolbar to mask CSS. And by the way, I'm mentioning lots of products that I use all the time, and Lori and her crew have put all this in a handy dandy page at the end with all the resources that I typically use with their links, and also some of my witticisms are at the bottom too. So anyway, you'll be sure to enjoy it. So we're going to be introducing the so-called init function, introducing the idea of a mission update, timestamp, and some other goodies here that we'll be looking at in stage 0. So what we want to do is we want to go back to the sandbox, and notice in all of these things, I've got a Winter Soldier stage start and a stage end, and that's for your benefit and for mine. You've already figured out I'm pretty long-winded. So in the event that we start running out of time, I can go to the end of a particular stage and just talk through some of the code. But at any rate, let's go to the start area. So I'm going to go to stage 0 start. So here's stage 0 start, loading. And notice when I first load, you can see that I've got my assets over here. Now it tends to open these little things up, which looks kind of scary. I like to close that because it makes me nervous. However, I am going to open up the main players. The main players, there's index file, great. There's activate soldier, great. And then there's scripts, activate soldier sketch also. So notice how nice this is. In your settings in CodeHS, you can open up multiple files and click on them and get different ones to see. Now, we're not going to be looking at activate soldier, which is the P5JS app, and the sketch that makes it happen. That's going to be like stage 3, I think, or stage 2. So I just have them open just to let you see them. But right now we're focusing on index. And so I'm just going to draw your attention to a couple of things. First, I like to see whenever I load something from scratch, I like to activate it and just see what I've been given. So at stage 0 starting, I've got all the framework for the HTML. Basically, it's all intact. We don't have to do any of that. Most of the styling is done for us too. But you'll notice something curious. If you're a detective, ooh, my little phrase is not loading there. It says loading is a placeholder, but I don't have the, freight car, what's the other one? Benign, 17. I don't have all that stuff. I wonder why. And then when I look over here, load sample, nothing happens. Submit, nothing happens. Clear, nothing happens, which we would expect because this is stage 0. But behind the scenes, and this is something that I do, I like Chrome. If I go Shift Control J opens up a little developer viewpoint that notice has different categories: elements, console, sources, network, and I like console. And this shows me what's going on behind the scenes. And what you're seeing here are little breadcrumbs that are kind of letting me see a trail of activity that I hope to complete. So I saw that it's trying to do something called init, which means initialize. I see that it's trying to load samples. I see that it's trying to submit code words. I see that it's trying to clear the TA, which, by the way, is my text area. So I put that in there as a guide for me to see the flow of what needs to happen. And when I'm teaching my students, often you're seeing exactly what I give them. I give them something that's kind of a shell. It works without working, and then we just go in and we start putting things in. Now, some troubling things. The loading thing is not happening. And then the little last update. As a web designer, I feel like it's important when you write a page that people can see when it was last updated, so they're not using old stuff. So none of that's happening, and let's see if we can't make some of that happen. So I'm going to go back to the code. I'm in stage 0 start. I'm going to hide that because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to make this a little larger. And so I have some to-dos here. It says we use breadcrumbs, yes. And so I use my X-ray vision to see what's happening behind the scenes. Well, one of the things I'm noticing, first of all, when I look at the head of my document, when you take the Bootstrap class in 2 weeks, you'll learn that you can bring in the CDN with these little guys. This one brings in the CSS, and this one brings in the JavaScript, and this what makes all the Bootstrap goodies work. This is where I'm bringing in my developer styles right here. I'm a firm believer that you ought to have comments that make it easier for other developers to see what's going on behind the scenes. I've got some page level styles, which don't worry about them right now. They're all complete. They work. But now here I get to, in the head, before I get into the body, I want the brain of the program to know that I've got an update. So, well, today's not the 9th, it's the 15th. But that silly thing was not working earlier. I'm going to change that to 15, and I'm going to come down and look at the bottom. I've also got, oh, by the way, I will show you, if you look at line 126, I've got a framework, a block quote element that's my words that are here in red. And notice how nice I could say text danger as a class in Bootstrap that made it nice and red. So Bootstrap is helping with all this lovely styling. We love you, Bootstrap. Notice it says loading, and this has got an ID called code words. Well, what I want to do is I want to link to that and change it with this script that's down here. So down here toward the bottom at about line 187, prior to the end of the body, I've created a script, and this is user level scripts. And by the way, to make things faster, I've gone ahead and put in some what I call global variables that are recognized by all functions to keep us from having to type so much. You can see here's my default code words. There's all the words, longing, rusted, etc., in a nice little array called default code words. These are the ones from the Marvel movie. Now, here's my sample data as a string. Notice it's not in an array, it's in a string. So what that tells me, eventually, we're probably going to have to parse that out. So we're going to have some way of reading this string and parsing things as an array. That's coming. And then here's some what I call some secret sauce, where I'm wanting to target different elements in the HTML for either styling or JavaScript behavior purposes. And then I use this just like it's going out of style. Because the document object model in HTML and JavaScript allows you to target things by different aspects, I give everything in their dog in the HTML usually an ID, so I can target it. So I've got code words, text area, it's an ID that I'm targeting as variable TA. And this is grabbing these guys to let me influence their behavior and their content, which we'll be doing later. I've got a variable called did submit that's going to let me know, did I submit the stuff yet? Now, this is stuff that is using an ID in JavaScript called local storage. And this is how I'm adding some intelligence to the machine. In Chrome, you have browser storage where you can get information that's stored, or you can set it if you want to. And so what I'm doing here is I'm saying, hey, go to the local storage and get an item called code word string, but it might not be there because you might not have run your program yet. So I've got a little check here. It says, okay, if it's not null and if it's larger than 0, take your text area, that's this guy, and change the inner HTML to the previous code word string, which was stored in memory. However, if that doesn't exist, we're not going to do anything. So we'll talk more about that later. Now, here's my init function. Notice I've got a little breadcrumb. The breadcrumb is the console.log thing that says init, load samples, and load code words. Well, I'm going to look at a little bit of init work here. So I'm looking at init. Now, you'll notice I didn't click any buttons to get things to work in the beginning. So how is it going to know that init is being called? Well, what I typically will do in the body of my web page, going up to around line 99 here, it says body onload equal init. So this, when you have a web page with tags like the body tag, these little things that look like equations are called attributes. And a really powerful one is the onload attributes that says, hey, when you load, in this case, the body, call the init function. And that's what's going to activate the magic of JavaScript, some special behavior. And that's how that thing occurred in the little breadcrumb that I was showing over here. At any rate, let's go ahead and start doing that. I'm going to look at the init. I would like init to actually do some stuff. So I'm looking at my notes here, and let's see what init has to do. There's not a lot that's going to happen there. First of all, I created something called an update span dot inner HTML shall be assigned last update. Now, what that's doing is previously I created a span called the update span that's at the bottom of the web page. And it's a span that I put as an ID called update span. And that's what I have up here as one of my things. I've mentioned that it exists, I believe. And in fact, let me make sure I did do that. I think I did. And so I've got this update span is going to be my last update variable. And then what I want to do also is I want to load code words. Okay, so loading code words is a function that's already been written. And notice you can have a function call a function in Java. And so load code words is down here. Now, I like to use comments a lot. It says these are the default code words used in the movie. We want to list them in our web page intro. So this function is going to call this one, but this one is nothing more than a breadcrumb yet. So we're going to have to do that one as well, but we'll do that momentarily. And then what I'm going to do is I have a variable called did submit equal false. And the reason I'm doing that when it initialize is because I have not submitted anything yet, and that did submit as a trigger that tells me whether or not I should reveal this magical panel down here that shows the contents from the text area. So that might be the end of init, but let's go down to the load code words for a second. Now, I want to show you something that I get kind of snarky with my students on. Particularly when you use Bootstrap, there are many divs that have these little open and close curly braces, and it's really easy to not know what a curly brace is ending. So whether I'm teaching Java, JavaScript, I like to mark, and it's extra work, I like to mark, oh, this curly brace ends load samples. This curly brace ends load code words. And this will save you tons of aggravation. And in fact, if you're a Python teacher, as you know, and this was horrifying, Python doesn't use curly braces. It uses spaces. What idiot came up with that? Oh, well, calm down. I will still put those kind of things with comments at the end of Python blocks as well. It just makes my life saner. So maybe that's a tip that will help you. At any rate, loading code words. How are we going to load code words? Well, load code words is an array. I've got to make it kind of a stringy thing to put in the little loading area. So how might we do that? So under load code words, I got a little bit of stuff here. I'm going to say var code words BQ shall be assigned document dot get element by ID, and that thing is called code words. Now, you wouldn't know that unless you looked at the source code. So you got to trust me that in the document, there's an element called code words. It's this guy right there. And I'm targeting it. It's a code words BQ. Now, BQ, by the way, is my letting myself know that this is a block quote that makes it kind of stand out a little bit. In other words, I now in the DOM can target this guy and put new stuff in it. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to come in and say a couple things. Var in equal default code words dot length. In other words, I need to know how many words there are in that array. And then if you teach computer science, you know, this is kind of bread and butter where you're going to iterate through an array and maybe glue entries onto a little temporary string. So I'm going to say that I've got var MSG equal quote, quote, which is an empty string. And then I'm going to iterate through my array for var and I equals 0, semicolon, I less than n minus 1. You'll see why that's there in a moment. You might think, you're going to leave off the last one. No, I'm not. And then I plus plus, and then open and close curly brace. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to concatenate message plus equal default code words square brace I. So if you're kind of new to the JavaScript world, what I'm doing is I'm reading an array and the index is telling me what word to get. So I start at 0, lovely zero-based indexing. It says go to the first one, which is in room number 0 of this hotel that called an array 0 all the way up, but it's not going to get to the very last one. And if you're thinking, you might know, you might say, well, why would he leave off the last one? Because I'm not going to go to the last one. Maybe you'll figure out why in a moment. And so then I'm going to say, all right, load that message, and then message plus equal quote, comma, space. So that's my little delimiter. I want these to be delimited by commas. Now there's a method to my madness here. If I delimit these phrases with a comma, then I can take that stuff like I did earlier and grab it and stick it right in my text area and it will work magically. So that's why I'm making sure that this is compatible with my other stuff. Now, what about the last one? Well, if you were in my class, I'd pose this question. Why did I leave off the last one? Because I'm super picky. I don't want the last element in with a comma. It shouldn't have a comma on the end of it. And if I were to put this thing on, go to the very end, the last one will have a comma, which is awkward. So after I get to the bottom at the end, then I'm going to tack on message plus equal. And default code words, square brace n-1. So that's going to be the last one. And then code words, BQ, block quote, dot, and this is again, secret sauce in web programming. Tag elements like a block quote have like a beginning and ending place. The stuff on the inside is called the inner HTML, and I can change that content with JavaScript, which is so cool. So I can say, hey, I want to replace this loading thing with .inner HTML. What do you want? The message I just created. So this is standard string, creating a string from an array. That's very kind of bread and butter in Python and JavaScript. In fact, I will often with my JavaScript, with my Java students, with my Python students, I'll actually take them to this app, let them play with it, and then show them this is what it looks like in JavaScript. And you know what? Most of my students, once I get used to doing this, can say, oh, that's not exactly like Java or Python, but I can envision how that works. And so I want them to be able to look at different languages and to be able on the fly see and compare the two different things. So in theory, if I save this thing and then refresh, if I don't have any typos, oh my gosh, look at that. I didn't know if I could do that without a typo. I was super nervous, but there we go. It worked. And so also notice my last update also, that's working. So this is just a little bit of modest stuff. Now notice the clear TA, that's this guy right here. I could code that, but I want to make sure we get to other stuff. And so in the final version of stage 0, you'll find that clear TA is done and submit code words and sanitize are not done. But again, to save time, I want to show you some things that are coded and other things we'll just look at. I do see that this is working though, which makes me super happy. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back over to my sandbox and let's go. That was stage 0 start. Well, I'm going to go to stage 1 start. Stage 1 start is what we just did plus that clear thing. So let's just load that again. My typical way of working with my students is, hey, when you get something from your loving teacher, run it first just to see what you got. So I'm going to open this up. I'm checking it as stage 1 start. Click, open it up big. Okay, load sample. Ooh, the load sample, this is the start. So load sample did work. Ooh, submit did not work. Clear is working. Okay, so we didn't talk about the load sample either. Let's look at it now that it's done in start and then see what we need to do as well. So that's in the index file still. So we know that this is kind of at the bottom. Let's look and see. Okay, there's the init that we did. There's the loads. Oh, now that was super easy. I could have done that in one line. Look what it is. I have some sample data. There it is. It's a string. It's comma separated the way it should be. And when I click the load sample button, look how easy that was. Because I'd created a variable that stored the text area in a variable, it knows that its value should be sample data. And that's what that's one little line of code. Isn't that marvelous? Now, one thing I always get confused on, some critters use, inner HTML. The text area thing is a little different. It doesn't use inner HTML, it uses value. I wonder, detectives, if we could figure out why by looking. In fact, this is typically what I would tell my students. You tell me why one is inner HTML and why one is value. Well, the way that we would figure that out maybe is to look at the actual, we can find that TA thing. So where is it? Oh, there it is. That's the button. Where's the, oh, there it is. Well, what I was wondering is that I've got a text area thing, and it does have a beginning and an ending tag, which kind of makes me think it would have been inner HTML, but in fact, the way it works, it uses the value. And if you didn't know that, that'd be something you have to Google or kind of experiment with. I was thinking, well, maybe it's one of those tags that's an empty tag that doesn't have a closing text, closing tag element, but it did. So interesting. But I find that causes confusion for me at times and also with the students. So sometimes it's inner HTML, sometimes it's value. In this case, it's value. And if I turned it around and said inner HTML and saw that it worked, it simply might not work. All right. Now, we've already did load code words. We've loaded clear TA. And now, incidentally, well, we talked that we would do the clear TA. Now, clear TA is clearing this guy. Now, notice there's a little bit more complexity to it in this sense, is that I'm going to take the value and make it empty. But then this is where I'm going to check and see, did they already submit something? If they did, then I'm going to do one thing. If they didn't, I'm going to do something else. And so this is where I'm coming in and I'm got a little span right there that loads their previous information. So when I clear this thing out, if it was showing that there was previous work here, that little green thing that says previous is going to go away. So that's kind of a subtlety that I wanted you to see. Now, in fact, I'm not sure. I was going to think, I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So where are we with code stage one? Stage one, we would like to focus on submitting the code words. Now, so two objectives. In fact, if I look at mission report, that was stage 0. Oops. Stage 1. Now, by the way, I love these little icons. I'm a big fan of using a product that's in the links called the Noun Project. The Noun Project is a place that you can get iconography that you don't have to give attribution to. There's a free and a paid version. The paid version is well worth it. Imagine finding that you have a picture of Bucky Barnes's metal arm in the Noun Project. I mean, that's phenomenal. So $99 a year is worth it to me. And so all of the iconography I have is coming here from the Noun Project. Now, why do I have a picture of a little devil there? Because in stage 1, it says nefarious users might try to sabotage your app with GIGO intentions. Okay. Now tell me, you know what GIGO means. Tell me, you know, don't you? Garbage in, garbage out. What if they give us bad stuff? Now, remember, earlier we were showing that I had a modification for that. I had a way of getting around that. So stage 1 is doing that. We haven't gotten the processing stuff, but think about it. We can't. We've got to make sure that by the time we get to the processing thing where the words are flying at us, we've got to make sure that it's not going to give us garbage. And so that's why we're still working here in this ecosystem. And so it says we want to implement the blue submit button. And then it says normalize the input with uppercase and provide functionality for CSV entries. And CSV, by the way, is comma separated values. I really like to emphasize that because if I like to teach my students a little bit of Excel, and Excel, if you can store information in comma separated values in a file, then you can get Excel to read it nicely. But we also, unbeknownst to them, we have space separated value functionality too. We didn't tell them that, but it's just kind of an extra. And in case our users can't follow simple directions, well, most of my students can't, I'm sorry. Utilize a function called sanitize string to pull off our GIGO prevention magic. And then we will implement a Bootstrap modal pop-up for empty inputs. We love you, Bootstrap 5. So that's what's going on with this. So I'm thinking,
before, just want to put it in your mind to be thinking, where is a good time to give them about a 5-minute break? Just
that's thank you. Lori knows me very well. She knows I could talk not for 2 hours, but for 2 days and not come up for air. And she's right about that. I think this is a great time. Let's take a little 5-minute break. And then when we come back, I'm going to actually show you what submit code words. We're going to actually look at the final product. I'm not going to type it all out, and we'll look at the sanitized string. And that way you'll have that logic. And then from there, we can go directly into looking at the P5JS. Laura, you're a saint, and I know everybody's singing your praises, including me. Okay, we'll take a little 5-minute break, and I'll be back. Laura, I'll let you keep the time and then just signal everybody when we're back. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Lori.
All at 2 minutes after the hour.
Okay, great. Thank you. You're a saint, Lori.
we'll start coming back together. We can do that. Take our time just a little bit. I know 5 minutes isn't long. Give you a chance to finish getting more coffee, a soda, whatever you need.
Hopefully you didn't run off to watch the Flash movie yet.
Kent, I forgot about that. That's got to be my weekend plan now, I think.
Yep, here we go.
All right, Kent, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay, great. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you, Lori, again. I guarantee I would have kept talking and talking and talking. So thanks, Lori. Okay, in your absence, you guys, what I did is I went ahead and loaded up stage 1 end, okay? Because I just want to talk you through some of the process of what we were discussing here with our mission report for stage 1. Now, one thing I want to show you that I think is super important, I've loaded this up so here's stage 1 end, and I just went ahead, there's the entry page. I went ahead and made it big, and there we go. Now, I want you to notice something. It's all ready to go here. Now, in Chrome, there's a extension by a guy named Chris Pederick. He has what he calls the Web Developer Toolbar, which is super helpful, and it's in your notes. So it's this little gear here, and when I do it, there's all sorts of magic that I can do. I can disable images. I can disable JavaScript. I can disable CSS. And in my development, I often like to disable the CSS and see what it really is looking like behind the scenes. This is X-ray vision. See, I'm giving you superpowers today, X-ray vision. So this is what it is. Now notice that there's some stuff showing here that doesn't show in the regular page. There's this horrible Winter Soldier program error, which sounds really horrible. And this is, in fact, it says you must add some entries before you can submit a programming routine. Well, this is the result of that error modal. So being a detective, what I'm thinking is, oh, that stuff was always there. It's just certain code triggers turn that on or off and make it visual in the fabric of the web page. And since the CSS is deactivated and I see it, and if I put the CSS back on and I don't see it, it must mean that's a CSS issue. And it is. And what's really cool is Bootstrap 5 has this class called visually hidden, and you can either put it on or put it off on an element to make it hide or show using JavaScript, which is super cool. So if I need that modal, I'll use it. If I don't, I keep it hidden. Also, you'll notice there's a little button here that says Launch Static Backdrop Modal. So this is a button that ordinarily is hidden. And what the clear TA little guy here is that when I clear, what's happening there is it does a little bit of extra work to see whether it needs to show any of this row here at all. And also, if I use some kind of error where I try to submit something that's not there, it triggers this button, which is always invisible, which will cause this pop-up to occur. And this is something it would have been a whole lot of extra work had I not been using Bootstrap. At any rate, I often like to see, okay, this is how yucky things really look like if we remove the CSS. And in fact, that's what it looks like with the CSS. So that toolbar is really handy. Incidentally, when I come in and I'm going to go use my X-ray vision again, this is the inversion Shift-Control-J. So I've noticed, I'm going to refresh, by the way. So when I refresh, I've initted, I've loaded my code words. Okay, I'm going to load my sample. And notice load sample is not working at this stage. And when I submit, oh wait, load sample did, I'm sorry. Load sample did work. When I submitted, now here's the thing that I want you to see before we talk about it in code. The trigger, the submit button triggers reading this information, parsing it using the sanitization process, and then clicks that little button that adds a class that removes a class from Bootstrap that was previously hiding this stuff. If I were to go in and look at this again with disable the styles, look, there's the words. All this was previously hidden by Bootstrap, and then I only revealed it once all my ducks, programmingly speaking, were in a row. So there we are. And also notice my activate button. The activate button has always been there. There it is. It's just I couldn't see it. I teach my student this. I'll say, okay, any website you go to, there may be hidden functionality that you won't know about until you hide the CSS. And this gives you maybe superpowers to do some things that otherwise the programs might not want you to do. So sometimes I regret telling my students that, but at any rate, so there we go back again. Now, notice at the end of stage 1, when I click activate, it did go ahead and launch this. And notice here, I want you to notice at the end of stage 1 here, this is now where we're getting into P5JS. And if I look at my breadcrumbs, I see that I have an init app, I have set up, and then you see I've got this little thing that says draw, and it's looking like it's in a loop. It's already, well, I've been babbling here, it's gone about 1,000 times. And so what we're going to see in just a moment is that P5JS uses 2 basic functions. It assumes that they live there. It assumes that you've given them meaning. One is the setup for setting up your animation. The other is a drawing function that does the work of your animation, which in our case is giving the words to animate. So nothing's happening here yet. It's going to in a moment, but I just want you to see it's all wired up. Now, let's talk briefly about, I'm in stage 1 end. Let's look at the submission process and let's look at sanitized string. Now, this is fairly involved stuff. If you teach Java or you teach JavaScript, this probably isn't that big of a deal. Let me just talk to you about it briefly. The submit code words goes and gets information from the text area. And now one thing that I often do is I know that people might put in leading and trailing spaces, and leading and trailing spaces can be a real problem. In most languages, there's a trim function that will let you carve out or remove leading and trailing spaces, which is a really good thing to do. So I'm grabbing my code string from my text area, I'm trimming it and recalling it code string. And by the way, I put a little comments. Lori knows this. Lori, in fact, this is a quiz. You know what DWR means. Don't break my heart.
I do. Say it one more time. What did you just say?
I'm putting her on the spot. That's okay.
No, I know it.
You do know it.
Danger Will Robinson.
Danger Will Robinson. So I have a couple of code phrases that I sprinkle throughout my programs. If I encountered a problem that caused me trouble, I put a note, Danger Will Robinson, DWR, from the old 60s sitcom, or not sitcom, sci-fi thing called Lost in Space. You ought to watch it. It's a hoot. But DWR is my way of saying, watch out, there can be a problem. And I'd previously forgotten to trim it, so I put a little note to myself with that. At any rate, I'm trimming it. Now, look at this loop. This is so cool. This is a little while loop that basically says, hey, there might be double spaces in the string. While there's double spaces, while code string includes double spaces, notice how nicely that reads. Replace all those double spaces with a single space. Isn't that magical? So it's getting rid of all that extra bloat. And then I do some other stuff to see, all right, was the code string length 0? In other words, was there anything in there once you've trimmed? See, this is the thing. Many users could put a bunch of empty spaces, blank space in there that the computer doesn't know it's blank space. If I don't trim it, it's just my animation's just gonna be throwing blank space at me. So I'm removing all the blank space. And now if the length is 0, notice my modal button, I'll click it. And that's going to call up that Bootstrap modal, says, hey, there's no data here. Now, here's where I check to see if there's commas. And there's where I'm replacing. It says if your code string does not include commas, it's going to change all spaces to comma space. And so it goes on. Having done that, then I'm then going to sanitize my string, which we'll talk about in a moment. And now this is the part that makes this row appear. So once I submit and that row comes in, notice this little thing says row 2 class list dot remove visually hidden. Now this is a bootstrap thing, but it's very nice. Row 2 is what houses this data. In JavaScript, there's an attribute called class list, and it's an array of all the classes that give functionality or appearance value to an element in the web page. You can add or remove. And so previously there was a bootstrap class called visually hidden that was there. And since I've sanitized my string and I'm ready to get going with this, I'm removing the visually hidden, and that's what made this appear. And then I do some other stuff. I store my thing in local storage. Now, by the way, the local storage is my adjusted code word string. Now, adjusted code word string is the code string that's after it's been sanitized. So usually I'll have the regular version, then the adjusted sanitized version that I often will print out in the side to see if did it really clean things up. And so once I've stored that, I turn on did submit as true, which is going to activate something else, usually having to do with that button. Now, let's talk just a bit about sanitizing the string. Sanitizing the string is where I'm going through and removing punctuation, dealing with weirdness of double commas with nothing in between. And I'm going to leave it to you to go in and look at this. But basically what I'm doing is I'm taking my string and I'm splitting it based on commas. The split function is super cool. If you've got a string, you can break it up into an array on any element that you like, which in this case is commas. And then I've got my code words as an array. Then I've created a temporary variable, and now I'm iterating through that array, much like I did earlier, and I'm grabbing word by word. I'm trimming each word. If the word is larger than 0, then I'm going to print it out, make sure it looks okay. But I made a note, Danger Will Robinson, if there's a space at the end, we have to worry about that. So when I'm done, I get my word and I'm going to be trimming it, grab the last one, do a little bit of extra stuff for the last one. I print it out and then I return it. So that's the stuff that's cleaning the thing up. And I bet you could probably find some issues with it. I try to make it as good as I could, but someday I'll have a couple of clones and about 5 alternative universes, and then I can really have fun. But in the meantime, so that's stage 1 end. And let's go to stage 2 now. So if I look at stage 2, so at the end of stage 1, we've got sanitized information. We're sending it to the other Activate Soldier, the P5JS stuff. And now here's where P5JS starts up. And so actually stage 2 is, says we've completed this, where focus is on Activate Soldier now. Not quite CodeJS, P5JS yet. I forgot. There's one little thing. Now, this is a little, if you look at it, you think, what the heck? What is that? It looks like some eggs in an egg crate. Why is that there? Well, that's my way. I've got all over my room, I've got little Easter eggs all over the place. They always ask, why do you have Easter eggs all over the place? Because I use them to illustrate the idea of objects, and I use an egg crate with the idea of an array. What we've got to do in stage 2 is we've got to grab that code string that's in the memory. It's a string, not an array. And if I want the words to fly at me one at a time, I'm going to have to break it up into an array, aren't I? That's what this stage does. And that's why I've got the little egg crate there. Now, you might be wondering, where was that stuff stored? So I'm going to, this is stage 1. Actually, let's go ahead. I'm going to go to stage 2. I'm going to go to stage 2 end. Here's stage 2 end. There's the index page. There's the Activate Soldier page. And there's the Activate Soldier sketch page. We really don't need index any longer because presumably that's working now. There's the index, the Activate Soldier page. Now, incidentally, I'm going to come over here. There's the index page. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Now, you'll notice it is remembering something from the past. the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from earlier, maybe. Also notice that little green thing appears magically. These are your previous ones. Do you want to use them? See, I'm making things easier for my user. Now, where can I see this stuff? Well, if I use my X-ray vision, Shift Control J to see what's going on behind the scenes, notice there's elements, console, sources, network. Well, there's a little thing called application. And in the application area, you see there's local storage. And when I click that, oh, look, there's my code word string. Now, by the way, I will deliberately name things according to their nature to make it easier for me to process what's going on. If I say code string or code word or code words, that could be a string, but also could be an array. So I like to say it's code word str for string, because then that tells me I've got to chunk it into a bunch of array elements. Now, my hunch is I could have stored it as an array if I'd wanted to, but maybe that would have been a smart thing. I don't know, but here we go. Code word string. Ooh, there we go. Now, incidentally, if you want to be mean and come in here and delete that, you can. And then when we try to run it, it's going to give us that system failure message again too. So I'm not going to do that right now, but I just want you to see that. But this is cool. Application, local storage, you can see what's going on. Now, if I come in, I'm at the end of stage 2. I'm going to go back to my console so I see my breadcrumbs. I'm going to go ahead and submit. I activate. And now notice here at the end of stage 2, earlier we saw that little setup and draw thing. It's not happening here, but I do see this thing. So my trail of breadcrumbs is telling me init app, read code words, create code words array. This is telling me what's happening. Oh, I bet he read the thing from local storage, chopped it into pieces, stored the pieces in an array, and the new code string and that was the code string he wound up with. But that other stuff's not happening. Let's see why. So incidentally, also, if you wanted to, we could go back over here and look at the source code for Activate Shoulder Sketch. But as you well know, another aspect of X-ray vision, you can right mouse click the fabric of the web page and go view page source. And this is the source code. So you can go and look at this too. Now, using this technique, I noticed that, and incidentally, Bootstrap garbage was, oh, I didn't say that. Bootstrap stuff is in the head of the document. Depending on what you're doing, your P5JS stuff, you might want it to be on the top in the head or at the bottom afterwards. It depends on what you're doing. If there's got a lot of stuff that has to happen before the animation can occur, like I need to read the code words and make them into array, I probably want to put the P5JS aspect at the bottom so everything's ready for me to go. And that's what happened here. Now notice on line 160, there's the CDN for P5JS. Now you can download that stuff and put it actually in your scripts, or you can use a content delivery network to do it. I did the content delivery network because that's easier. If you go to the P5JS ecosystem, it will walk you through both techniques. Notice also, I've commented out the script that says activate soldier sketch.js because I don't want to call that script just yet. Now, I could have seen that same thing over here in the activate soldier. Notice, oh, that's the sketch. Here's activate soldier. So in activate soldier, notice that script that's what was giving me the setup thing and also the draw thing. It's not there yet. Our next stage will bring that in. However, in the meantime, what were we doing here? Well, when we loaded the page, we wanted it to read the local storage. Now, here's one of those little things here. DWR, because I didn't know this. What is DWR? Danger, Will Robinson. Incidentally, the 60s show Lost in Space is a hoot, and it's in Hulu. So I checked. So if you want something more fun to do than watching me, you can watch Lost in Space episodes. Also, Netflix came out with a great reboot of Lost in Space, which is really, really good. And it's loosely related to the older one. It's not campy. It's not corny. It's actually really, really good. But anyway, but Dangerwood Robinson, look what happened. I tried to use my typical on-page load init thing, and it failed. And here's why. The Bootstrap ecosystem, I'm sorry, the P5JS ecosystem, which is processing, animation with JavaScript, uses a keyword called init. And if I bring in that ecosystem and I try to use init, then it gets confused. It would be a naming collision. So I had to change this to init app. Okay. So now here's where I'm updating my span for my date. Now, here, look, read code words. Oh, look. It's so easy to local storage. Why didn't I use local storage all the time? I'm simply returning the local storage get item code word string. So that one function's a one-liner. Read my code words. Great, got them. Then word list shall become create word code word array from word string. Now, let me mention, in the script earlier, I have some global variables. I tell the students global variables are kind of like celebrities. They're recognized throughout the world. Tom Cruise is recognized throughout the world. Joe Biden is recognized throughout the world. They recognized everywhere. And these are celebrities. Everybody, every function knows about code word, word string, word list, app div, loading paragraph, controls div. Everybody knows about these guys. So therefore, in read codes array, if you come down here and look, this is that same old thing. It's saying, hey, I want to change that string to an array. Okay. Now here, Dangerwood Robinson, I'm surprised I didn't put that here. What happens if it tries to read something that isn't there? If you're a Java teacher, you've seen that infamous null pointer exception. You get the equivalent of that, which is terrifying. So you have to come in here and say, hey, I read something from word string, which was from local storage, but what if it's null or its length is 0? Return an empty array. Otherwise, bad things happen. But in those, by the way, the return thing truncates anything else that was happening. If I go down here, then it means, all right, well, we have something to work with. So I'm going to create a variable called adjusted code string. Now, why am I doing adjusted code string? I'm still really nervous about getting this to be read in a particular way. I'm going to go through and read any spaces and make them commas, comma spaces. Then I'm going to take my code words or my code adjusted code string and split it based on commas. We love you, split. Basically, it's taking that string that's separated by commas and chunking each piece into that egg crate of the individual cells. And now I've got my array. So that's what's happening there. And that's basically what stage 2 does. Okay. It's just reading the stuff. Now, are we ready for P5JS? I think so. So that's stage 3. So if I come to our mission report, stage 3, our focus will be activate soldier.html. We're going to re-implement the activate soldier sketch. And by the way, often in P5JS, it's simply called sketch. I called it activate soldier sketch because I thought that was a little bit more clear. And that's fine. I'm going to be using X-ray vision to see what's going on behind the scenes. And then we're going to, it says begin completing functions setup and draw, which are the bread and butter of P5JS. If I'm a P5JS application, I must have a setup function and I must have a draw function. We're going to look at the global variables and see what they do. Now here's where I'm talking about that failure of what happens if we run this page before the input is received. It's a system failure. And I had a graceful system way of, we saw that already, that it doesn't completely wig out. Use Bootstrap 5 and JavaScript to show and hide elements on the page as they're needed. Ensure the app runs properly at different browser sizes and orientations. What that's talking about is that I wanted this to look good on a phone. So Lori's going to put this in your show, in the show notes, but this is actually live at, I have a site called Tech Novice Tools, TNT affectionately, And this Winter Soldier app is already there. And what that means is while you're watching while you're waiting for the Flash movie to start, you can go to TNT and experiment there. Well, the Winter Soldier app is already live. And the reason I like to do that is because then I can see, does it look good on a phone? And Bootstrap makes it look good on a phone. At any rate, that's what stage 3 is going to do, is kind of get this going. So let's go to the stage 3 end and see what we have. So stage 3 end did a couple things. Now, by the way, if you have nothing else to do in the summer, I feel sorry for you, but if you have nothing else to do in the summer, remember, you can fork all these things over and you can try this yourself. You can go to stage 3 start and toy around and see if you can do it. And then you have the solution stage 3 end, and you can compare and contrast. Also, you might find a better way of doing things. But here I am in the end, stage 3. That's the index file. I'm going to open up the activate soldier HTML. And then there's this magical script, activate soldier sketch JS. Now let's come in and look first at activate soldier. If, by the way, I run this, notice it is remembering stuff from the past. Great. Submit, run. Oh, now this time it's actually running a blank screen. That's why, and here's why. I probably have a shell of setup and have a shell of draw, but they don't have anything in them yet. Let's go Shift Control J to see the breadcrumbs. Oops, it was lagging. Come on. There we go. So notice init app happened once, read code words, create code word array. Ooh, there's my code string. Now I like to echo print that stuff out because I like to see, did it really do what I thought it did? Then notice this thing says setup, and then you see draw happen a couple of times, and then it saw that I resized this. And did you notice I've got some resizing stuff that's what I call no touch code, and that means getting the thing to resize is a little bit of a lesson in and of itself. And so when you go and you look at my stuff for stages 3 and 4, I'll have areas that are marked as no touch code. And that means enter at your own risk. This works. It resizes the canvas. It makes it compatible with iPhones and portrait and landscape view. If you want to mess with it, you're welcome to, but you could mess it up. And so when I opened up this panel, it resized and it started the drawing process again. So notice, and this is the magic of Bootstrap 5. As I do this, notice how it pops at different sizes. See the little bar? It's yellow. You'll notice at certain times it kind of pops and gets a little bit larger. Those are Bootstrap, what are called breakpoints. Take the Bootstrap class, children, in a couple of weeks, where we're going to be talking about movies, by the way. So at any rate, you can see that it's popping and it's working fine. Now, notice the draw thing is engaged, but not doing anything of interest. Okay. So now I'm going to, I don't think I need this again. I'm going to hide that back so it pops back into big view. Notice my buttons. Ooh, my buttons don't seem to be doing anything either. So what's happening here in stage 3 end? Well, first, in Activate Soldier, I did re-engage my script. So now the focus at index is now fine. Activate Soldier is now pretty much fine. It's now the script. This is the P5JS part. So when I come in and I look at it, I liked, by the way, in all my files, you'll notice I put header comments. I make my students do that with formal projects. I used to work as a research engineer for the Department of Energy doing what used to be called Star Wars stuff. And I'll never forget when I first started, it really was called that, actually called Strategic Defense Initiative, but oh well. I received, while I was waiting for my clearance, I received 4 or 5 notebooks that thick of code that was not documented. And my boss said, while you're waiting for your clearance, you need to understand all these thousands of pages of code that are not documented, and they use horrible variable names. And I learned, oh my gosh, if they just put some header comments and told me who wrote it, when they wrote it, what it's intended to do, and use meaningful variable names. So I've learned that lesson the hard way. Now, in this script that's for P5JS, I've got some global variables. Some of these are canvas and interface variables. These are making it will look nice. You don't have to worry about that for this app. Application variables, these are the variables I need for what I'm going to do. Now, let's talk about what these variables are doing. The step, every time a word is shown, could you notice when we saw it would step and then get a little bit bigger step? So the step is kind of like a stage in which the word's growing. I need to know at what rate to grow it. So that's the growth percentage. Also, you'll notice that the words kind of fade out as they got big. So I needed a fade factor, something that caused them to change in opacity. The maximum step is kind of an air trapping thing, and a frame rate says how fast the general thing goes. Now, these are the word index. What word am I on? What's the word that's being animated? What's the current opacity? And what's my list of words? These are things that will let me, should I run? Are you ready to run? Are you paused or not? What's the error word? System failure? What's the delay for the sequence reset? These are kind of things that make it kind of look nice. I've got a notification. The notification is saying, hey, we're reloading, or hey, you idiot, you didn't provide any words. Provide us, here's a link for the words to get some words if you didn't get them. There's the stuff for the progress bar, the pause button, the restart button, and the controls div stuff. Now, no touch code. I wanted to have it sleep. When I pause it, I want it to stop. And that's the idea of sleeping, which is a little bit involved, and I never can remember how to do it. It's kind of nasty. So I have a link here that's basically my hyperlink to where I got help with this. And this is a good practice that I teach my students, that if I find something that's like gold, I'm not going to steal it. I steal it, but I show where I stole it, because I might need to go back and read details about it. Doesn't keep me from stealing, but at least I'm giving some credit to it. Also, the no-touch code here is for the resizing. Now, here's the setup stuff, and this is the end. This is stuff I would have coded out with you if we'd had the time. But notice I've got a breadcrumb that says setup. Now, by this, all this stuff, this is what is looking at the responsiveness. This is what's setting the size of the canvas as it resizes. P5JS requires you to have a canvas. And so I'm creating a canvas here with a create canvas function from Bootstrap. From P5JS. And incidentally, while I'm thinking of it, I have a link. In my pages, I teach my students that if you're using something, make it easy for people to get to what you're dealing with. So you can see here, I've got a link here to the P5JS ecosystem. So it actually opens up in another tab. So P5JS is the processing.org's branch for doing their magic with the JavaScript environment. There's processing.py for Python, processing for Android, processing for Java as well. And so we're focusing on JavaScript. So this, I like to have a link here in case I'm having problems. I can go in and directly here, I can search for Canvas. And it's going to be telling me, oh, there's this thing for creating canvases. And they give you a reference. And here's what's so cool. Look here. Got little examples that you can copy paste. So this is how I taught myself. I never had a course in P5JS. There are a couple of books that are great that I should have put in the notes. But anyway, I use this to create a canvas. And all that's what's going on here, but I've made it responsive. Now, here I'm initializing some variables. Step is starting at 1. I found that a growth percentage of 10% was good. I found a fade factor of 3 was pretty good. I maximized the number of steps at 200, and I set a frame rate of 60. I'm going to start my word index at 0, right? Because I've got a list of words and I'm going to read the first one, which is room 0, then the next one, 1, 2, etc. And then I'm setting the opacity at 255, which means that I can actually see it. And then, by the way, these are some things in the setup that are basics in P5JS. Do you want to see shapes with borders around them? If not, no stroke. The background black, there are basic code words, color words in P5JS, like black, white, all the standard colors. So I'm setting my background to black. Notice there's a text size. I'm at 0 because it starts out being 0. You can say how you would like your text aligned. I'm aligning it with center, and I can say I want Georgia as my font, which is, I just picked that, which I thought was pretty good. Now, my list is my word list. So that came from my init app and Activate Soldier. Now, I made a little note there because I might have forgotten, where the heck did the word list come from? Well, it came from the setup page in Activate Soldier, and that's my list. Here's where I say, is your list 0? If it is, you shouldn't run. You want to have your word as error word, and I'm going to say, hey, you idiot. You gave us in the setup, you gave us a list that's empty. Shame on you. And we're going to grab from the document the notification inner HTML, and we're going to create a little notification that has a link back to the index page and say, show us some words or add some words for the sequence. And this links them back to the input page. Also, notice the controls div class list. This is adding the bootstrap thing of visually hidden, meaning, hey, if there's no words, we want to show system failure. We want to have a link to get us to some words, and the controls for pause and reset and all that stuff needs to be hidden. And so I'm adding that hiding thing. Otherwise, if we have a list in our setup, should run will be true, and our word will be our list from word index. That's going to be the first word. And so that's the setup. Then also this is turning on, it's getting the notification aspect from the DOM. Also, I'm setting up my progress bar. Here, I'm setting up my frame rate. How fast would I like the movie to appear? And then you can see here, I have that phrase called Danger, Will Robinson. Here's another one I use called Eureka. If I were struggling with something and then found a way of getting it to work nicely, I put a little Eureka in there. And this is something that was a subtlety on making the paragraph, the loading paragraph, and the pause and the restart button work nicely. I was having some trouble getting that to work, and this made it work nice. It's a subtlety you could play with. But what did setup do? Setup gave a meaning to all the variables that are going to control the animation. And it says, are you ready to run the animation or not? If you are, then should run is true. And now we get to the thing that happens with setup, and that is it calls the draw. Now, if you look at so basically any P5JS program is going to have a setup function and a draw function that work together. Now, in the draw, notice this is relatively short. I threw a little async thing in there. Here's why. Getting it to pause was a little bit troublesome. And to get that little sleep thing to work, I had to throw in this async thing, which I didn't know. And frankly, I don't fully still understand it. But you know what? I teach my students that sometimes that's normal. Sometimes when we go to the Cave of Wonders and we're Aladdin, we say magic words that we don't know what they mean, like abracadabra or open sesame. And as long as the dadgum thing opens up, I don't care if I understand it. Okay. Maybe someday I will, but okay. So that's what this did. Now, look at what this is doing. The draw, background black. Now, it's crazy how easy this is. It's saying, hey, every time you draw a frame, we'd like you to make the background black. We'd like you to fill. Now, this is an RGB white with opacity setting. This is what the text color is going to be. And the opacity is going to be changing as we go. It says, if not, should run. Now, remember, we had previously said should run is going to tell us whether it should work. If should run is true, not true is false, this will not happen. But if should run is false, this is going to set the text size as 50. It's going to basically say, hey, Mr. Draw function. See, here's the thing. With P5JS, you do your setup, and then you have your draw. Draw will always run once, or maybe more times. It will automatically be called by setup. You can control whether you want it to keep running or not. And that's what this little function that says no loop is. So let's suppose somebody didn't give us the proper words and we're in the draw. I set up some background stuff. I'm setting up my fill for my words. That's the text color of the words. And then it says, if it's not going to run, set your text size to 50. This is the text command is the function that sets the word and the particular location in the canvas that you want. And then I turn on no loop. And what that meant is just draw it once and stop. And then I return and I get out of the draw. Now, watch what happens. Incidentally, this is stage 3 end. Let's save. I don't think I made any changes. I'm going to reload this right quick and submit and activate. And let's look at breadcrumbs. It's being really laggy. Okay, so draw's happening. I'm not seeing anything happen yet. Let me think. There's something that's keeping it from showing. Oh, I do have my progress bar. Oh, by the way, in this stage, in stage 3, I've not yet put in the pause stuff and the restart stuff. So stage 4 is letting me tweak a little bit what's going on. Now I'm looking to see, this is happening, the background is happening. I'm looking at my notes to see, is there something I left off here? Hang on a second, I'm just looking. I might have forgotten to turn one little thing off because I would have thought I would have seen some words there. Let me see. It may be a subtlety that I forgot to put in. Let's see here. I wonder if it's an opacity setting. No. Okay. I've got something that's keeping it from working here, but it may be a subtlety. The thing is, I'm not seeing it work the way I would have thought that maybe we'd start seeing something, and we're not, but I'm not getting any error messages, and I do see the draw thing is working. So rather than fiddling with it, I do know that stage 4 end. In fact, I am curious about something. Let's go to stage 4 start, and let's try stage 4 start. I'm wondering if I forgot to put something in. Let's see. So this is stage 4 start. I'm going to go and run it. I submit, I activate. It loaded the console. Okay, there's something that I'm sure I'll see it when I look at stage 5 or stage 4 end. Okay, so this is working. We're not getting any action there. Okay, well, I could worry about it, but that's exactly why I have the staging stuff. So let's go to stage 4 end and see if we can find out what does stage 4 have that stage 4 end has that stage 4 or stage 3 did not have. So let's see. Now, if stage 4 doesn't work, oh, I'm going to be really embarrassed. Let's come in. So this is stage 4 end. So let's run. Submit, run. Okay, there we go. There we go. So there was some subtlety, and in fact, maybe if I were a liar and a deceiver, I would say, you know, I left it as an exercise for you to look at stage 3 and then at stage 4 and see what was left out. But actually, there's something I just didn't catch with that. But happily, stage 4 end is working. Now let's, oh, and look at the lovely little progress bar. Now I am curious. Let's go look at our breadcrumbs. Shift Control J. Now, occasionally when I do this, you'll get this weird listener thing when it pops up. Sometimes if that happens, I just refresh and then it seems to go away. And I haven't quite figured out why that is happening. Okay. Notice something that's happening now that didn't happen before is it's saying this update progress bar. I'm wondering if there might have been something in update progress bar that was not, that was keeping the words from loading. That might have been the case. That would be the place to look. You'll notice that I did turn off that breadcrumb that says draw, and because it's going to drive you crazy. Depending on your frame rate, even while I'm babbling here, we could easily see that the draw breadcrumb comes out like 10 trillion times, and it could affect the speed of our application. So if this looked a little choppy, then that might be because we're having a lot of stuff being printed to the console. But stage 4 end seems to be working fine now. And in the end also, notice I've got this little pausing thing and the resetting thing. Let's take a look at that code right quick. So remember, that would be in the activate soldier sketch. So here's activate soldier sketch. That's hard to say. Let's see. I'm just looking to see if there's anything. Oh, I wonder, text size step is there. I'm just curious. Is that what I forgot to put in? Did I forget to put in those things? And it's still kind of bugging me there. Let's see. I may have forgot to put that in the draw thing. Let's see. That looks like that might be what I neglected to put in. Oh, well, it's working now. It's this stuff right there. Oh, you know what? Talking to myself. Function draw. That's it. This is the stuff that was missing in stage 4. Let's talk about it. So if the thing is not, if I've got stuff to run, this is the stuff I forgot. I'm going to get up my text size. So step updates my size of my text. I'm going to update the step by 1 plus the growth percentage. And then I'm going to put in my text. And now here, if my step exceeds the maximum step, that's where I update my progress bar and I take the opacity back down to 0 or back down to 1. And the opacity changes as this thing grows. That's the stuff that I was neglecting to put in stage 4. So I'm really not losing my mind, at least not too much. If I come back and look at stage, the draw, I thought, boy, that is pretty lean. So stage 4 start did not have the stuff that changed the size of the text and monkeyed with the opacity. But we now gratefully are seeing it here in stage 4 end. So basically this is just growing the size of the text by the given percentage. And this is the stuff that's going to update my progress bar. And notice the opacity, reset brightness, and load new word and or start the list over. So this is the stuff that's either going to start me over again or sleep, depending on whether someone has paused the stuff. The update progress bar is no touch code, so you can read that. And notice, by the way, these are those things that make you, as my mom would say, this makes a preacher cuss on Sunday. Let's look at update progress bar. And by the way, this is why I put in all that Eureka stuff. If you look on line 180, update progress bar, that's the thing that's doing this magical stuff right there, which I think looks so cool. I couldn't get it to work. And then finally notice it says Eureka must have the percent added on. So when I take my progress bar element and I'm styling the width, I had the percent, which I thought would have been perfectly fine, but you have to have the percent symbol glued on without a space. And it took me maybe 30 minutes to figure out why this was not working. And I think I don't think Googling helped. I had to just sit there thinking, certainly you don't have to put a stupid percentage sign on there, do you? And well, yes, you do. Now let's take a look at the Pause app. And this is very common that I use with my students. Is I used to have buttons where I'd have a pause button and a go button. And I thought that's just cluttering. Really, pause and continue are the same button, aren't they? So since I can target this with HTML, can't I not use a variable called isPaused, which is a Boolean, by the way, and look at the status of isPaused and just toggle the label on the button based on the status of isPaused, and also notice green for go, yellow for warning. That's using Bootstrap styles. So the little isPaused Boolean variable is either adding or removing from my class list. Incidentally, Bootstrap has lots of buttons, button success, button outline warning, and these are really cool. Styling them yourself would be a pain. And I can just add or remove those classes to my pause button class list, and it's so nice. And so this is toggling my, what happens with my pause button. It's changing whether it should say pause or continue. Also, it's disabling or re-enabling the restart button. And then this is the stuff, this was kind of gnarly, the restart sequence. Notice another Eureka. Per source for sleeping function above. This is how I activate the sleep. And you activated my sleep a long time ago, Mr. Pendleton. Okay, maybe I did. Sleep 1,000 dot then function. Ooh, what an icky command. But that's what's causing it to sleep for a second, and then it clicks the pause button, which activates it. So you can study that in your spare time after the Flash movie and after you watch I know you want to go back and watch Captain America Civil War now, again, having talked about all this. I'm looking at the clock, and let me just say, if there's anything else I want to mention here, hopefully you have got everything you need to go in and look at this a little bit more deeply. It's a lot. It's like drinking out of a fire hose, and I do acknowledge that, but I try to have it staged in such a way that if you're interested, you can go back and look at it a little bit more at your leisure. But I wanted to give time for the team to make any wrap-up comments or whatever. You guys, I'm the only teacher I'm only computer science teacher here at school, at my school. And so it's so nice to be with people that kind of speak my language. I hope that I've spoken some language that you recognize. But you guys are my people, and I'm so grateful. You had a trillion other things you could have done today. And if you've joined us today, I really, really appreciate it. And it's just been a delight working with you guys and with the CodeHS team. I love doing these workshops. I've got 2 more to get to do. And but I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Lori and your team, if y'all need to say anything.
Thank you, Kent. That was awesome. I always enjoy your workshops because I always feel like I learn something new every single time. And this time I was ready for my quiz. I knew it was coming. So
and I didn't ask anybody, okay, what those special words meant. I might just leave that for y'all come to the next workshop and I'll tell you then.
There you go. I like that. All right, everybody. So we're getting close on our closing time for today's workshop. So a couple of things that I wanted to make sure I mention. We are just starting to announce now that we do have a CodeHS PD membership that will be launching in beginning of July, I think. So I think somewhere around July 1. And so you can see more information if you head out to codehs.com/PD/membership. And I think, yep, Anna just popped that into chat for us. So definitely take a look at that. It's a really cool option. We are very excited about this. If you are familiar with other professional learning, different organizations, ISTE, for instance, CSTA, I know ISTE, you can choose from all those courses that they have and all kinds of things. This is going to be similar. We actually have a huge library of mini PD courses that are available, about 5 hours long each. And a PD membership will give you access to all of those mini PD courses, exclusive live workshops, and the library of all of the workshops and webinars that we have available for you. So you'll definitely want to check into that. That is coming soon. We have a ton of other resources for you. I mention this every single time, but if you are not a CodeHS certified educator, we really, really want you to join that community. So definitely check it out. I believe you can send in applications for that anytime. So definitely check it out. I was a CodeHS certified educator, so you definitely want to do that. And also make sure that you're taking a look at those upcoming workshops as well. CodeHS.com/freepd. And remember, there's no limit. There's a bunch on there. Sign up for any and all. If you can't attend, no worries. I will send you the recording and all the resources. And we have Python week coming up next week. So we are going to kick it off. I'm so excited. We're going to kick it off with Scott Hedrick on Tuesday with Getting Started, Teaching Intro to Python. And he is going to get us into the course and how you can get started with it. And then on Wednesday, I'm all mixed up on my days now for next week. On Wednesday, we will have another teacher trainer with us, Rob Kramlich, and he will be doing a deeper dive into teaching Python. And the one that's not, there's a couple that aren't on here yet. Kent will be back with us next week, Thursday, for his Python, and it'll be an advanced applications Python. And I think that's the coin flipping program, if I remember correctly. So I highly recommend you all tune in for Kent's next workshop. And at the very end of the week, we will have a workshop called Data Science and AI. And that's kind of our next level Python courses. So if you're getting your students to the point where they're ready for something beyond the introductory levels of Python, that's going to be another workshop that you're going to want to check out. So all that's coming up and so much more beyond that. So definitely head out to codehs.com/freepd to register for those workshops. And one final humble request, please, if you could take a moment to fill out our workshop survey, we would so appreciate that. codehs.com/workshop survey. And let us know what you liked. Let us know if there's something you didn't like. Let us know if there's something you want to see. We truly go through the surveys. We look at your suggestions, and we want to make sure that we are bringing you what you need. So definitely take some time to go through that. We so appreciate your feedback. And thank you, everybody. It has been amazing to be here with you all again. I tell everybody this is always my favorite time of year. I love coming to work and knowing I get to connect with so many educators. I absolutely love this. So thank you for letting me be a part of your day. And thanks to the CodeHS team. Kent, thank you. This was awesome. And thank you to all of you for all you do. I hope you are finding time to take care of yourselves this summer. Make sure you find time to relax, recharge, and get ready for that new school year in weeks. So don't think about it too much yet. Thanks, everybody. I cannot wait to see you at another CodeHS workshop. See you all soon.